The massive crystal hall of the Galactic Council sparkled under the light of three suns. Captain James Walker stood straight, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he observed the gathered alien representatives. Some floated in anti-gravity pods, others towered 3 times his height, and a few were so small they needed hovering platforms just to be seen. 20 years after Earth discovered faster-than-light travel, humanity had finally been invited to join the Council. Walker and his crew of the starship Thunder represented Earth at this historic meeting. He could feel the aliens' eyes studying his every move, like scientists watching a curious specimen. And these, humans, a tall, blue-skinned council member spoke. They achieved space travel despite still engaging in tribal conflicts. The alien's voice carried a tone of disbelief and mockery. Another council member, covered in shimmering scales, added, "Their military still trains in primitive physical combat. They haven't evolved past the need for violence." Walker kept his face neutral, though his jaw tightened slightly. Next to him, his first officer, Tom Rice, shifted uncomfortably. The Council viewed Earth's military history as barbaric, unable to understand why a species would maintain combat skills after achieving technological advancement. "We believe in being prepared for all situations," Walker replied calmly. "Technology can fail. When it does, we adapt." The council chamber filled with musical sounds that Walker recognized as alien laughter. "Adapt? By fighting with your hands like animals?" asked a floating orb of purple gas. Before Walker could respond, the chamber's lights flashed red. Warning sirens blared in multiple frequencies, some beyond human hearing but visible in the aliens' panicked reactions. "Pirates," the announcement echoed in several languages. "The Crimson Cartel has breached the Council's defenses." The orderly chamber erupted into chaos. Council members scattered, their security forces moving in pre-programmed patterns that already seemed to be failing. Through the crystal walls, Walker saw several sleek, red-striped ships firing at the Council's defensive platforms. "Thunder, report," Walker commanded into his communicator. "6 hostile ships, Captain," his ship's tactical officer responded. "They've knocked out the Council's automated defense grid with some kind of virus. Council ships are struggling to coordinate." Walker watched as the Council's forces followed their standard protocols, making them predictable and vulnerable. The pirates knew exactly how to counter their programmed responses. "Rice, get our people ready," Walker ordered. "Standard Earth protocols. Tell them to remember their training." While alien representatives fled or froze, the human delegation moved with practiced precision. Walker's crew sealed emergency doors, established defensive positions, and began evacuating civilian council members to safer areas. The crystal walls shuddered as the pirates breached the station. Armed boarders in sleek armor poured in, expecting to find easy targets. Instead, they found humans who had overturned tables for cover, improvised weapons from broken equipment, and organized the station's security forces into an effective resistance. Walker grabbed a ceremonial staff from a fallen display, feeling its weight. When 3 pirates rounded the corner, they laughed at his primitive weapon. Their laughter died when he closed the distance before they could aim, using the staff to disarm the first pirate and disable the second. The third tried to retreat, shocked by the human speed and aggression. Throughout the council chamber, similar scenes played out. The human security team adapted to the pirates' advanced weapons, using close combat to negate their advantages. They employed tactics that seemed random to the aliens, but followed years of training in handling superior forces. The pirates, like the Council, had expected primitive savages. Instead, they found warriors who combined strategic thinking with controlled aggression. When ship-to-ship communications were jammed, the humans used hand signals. When energy weapons proved ineffective against pirate shields, they switched to physical combat. Most shocking to the watching council members was how the humans remained calm throughout the battle. There was no berserker rage, no mindless violence. Every move was calculated. Every action had a purpose. Even cornered, they showed no fear, something almost unheard of among known species. Within 20 minutes, the remaining pirates retreated, leaving behind their wounded and dead. The council chamber, moments ago a battlefield, fell silent except for the sounds of emergency systems and medical teams. Walker helped a young council aide to her feet. She stared at him with 4 eyes wide in disbelief. "You fought them," she whispered. "When the automated defenses failed, when the security protocols proved useless, you just adapted and fought." "That's what humans do," Walker replied simply, already checking on his crew. "We prepare, we adapt, we overcome. It's in our nature." The council members who had hidden during the attack emerged to find their pristine chamber secured by humans. The same humans they had mocked as primitive now stood vigilant, ready for any further threats. In their eyes, the council members saw something they had never expected to find in a civilized species: the controlled power of a true warrior race. The aftermath of the pirate attack left the council in disarray. While medical teams treated the wounded, Walker watched the council's military commanders argue about their failed defense protocols. Their ships remained in defensive formations, weapons powered down despite the recent attack. "The protocols have worked for 10,000 years, insisted Admiral Brightcore, his crystalline body flickering with agitation. "We cannot abandon proven methods because of one incident." "Your proven methods nearly got everyone killed." Rice spoke up, earning shocked looks from the alien commanders. "The pirates knew exactly what you would do because you never change." The council's military leaders bristled at the humans' words. Each species had perfected its combat protocols over centuries, programming them into their warriors and ships. The idea of deviating from these patterns seemed to physically pain them. A warning klaxon interrupted their debate. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. The announcement sent ripples of fear through the alien commanders. Crimson Cartel signatures detected. "They're back to finish what they started," Walker said, watching tactical displays. "And this time, they brought friends." The council commanders began implementing their standard protocols again. Walker shook his head and grabbed the communication system. "Thunder, forget the standard response. Remember the Prussian gambit." His crew's acknowledgement came as the pirate fleet emerged. 15 ships, arranged in an attack pattern that would easily counter the council's defensive formation. But the Thunder didn't join the council's ships. Instead, it powered down its weapons and appeared to drift, playing dead. "What are you doing?" demanded Admiral Brightcore. "Your ship must join the defense line. It's protocol." "Watch and learn," Walker replied calmly. The pirates charged forward, their formation perfect to break through the council's lines. They never noticed the seemingly dead Thunder until it suddenly powered up behind their fleet. Walker's crew had trained for this maneuver countless times, inspired by ancient naval battles on Earth. Thunder's weapons blazed to life, targeting the pirates' rear ships before they could react. The sudden attack threw their formation into chaos. The council commanders watched in shock as the human vessel moved in ways their tactical computers said were impossible, dancing between enemy ships like a predator among prey. "They're breaking formation," Rice called out. "Now's your chance. Attack while they're confused." The council ships hesitated, their commanders struggling to adapt to the changing situation. Walker grabbed the comm again. "Forget your protocols. The enemy is right in front of you. Fight." Something in Walker's voice, the raw command of a warrior, broke through their hesitation. The council ships began firing, their attacks uncoordinated but effective against the scattered pirates. For the first time in centuries, they fought without their precious protocols. The pirates, faced with unexpected resistance, tried to retreat, but the Thunder had disabled their rear ships, trapping them between the human vessel and the council fleet. Within minutes, the remaining pirate ships surrendered. In the council chamber, the alien commanders stared at their tactical displays in disbelief. The battle had lasted less than 15 minutes. Their perfect formations lay in ruins, their protocols forgotten, but they had achieved a victory that should have been impossible. "How?" Admiral Brightcore asked, his crystalline form dim with confusion. "How did you know they would fall for your deception?" Because we think like warriors, not machines, Walker explained. We study our enemies, adapt our tactics, and use their expectations against them. The pirates thought they knew exactly how this battle would play out. That was their weakness. But the protocols, the formations, thousands of years of perfected combat doctrine, another commander protested weakly, are useless if your enemy knows them all. Rice finished. Humanity learned this lesson centuries ago. The most dangerous warrior isn't the one with the perfect plan. It's the one who can throw that plan away and still fight effectively. The Council's military leaders gathered around Walker and his crew, their earlier disdain replaced with cautious respect. They had witnessed something they thought impossible: warriors who could think, adapt, and overcome in the heat of battle. Perhaps, Admiral Brightcore said slowly, his color brightening, there are things we could learn from humanity's warrior traditions, things our protocols never considered. Walker nodded, but his attention was already elsewhere. He watched the captured pirate ships, knowing this victory would send ripples through the galaxy. Humanity had proven itself not just capable of fighting, but of revolutionizing warfare itself. The age of rigid protocols was ending, and a new era of adaptive combat was about to begin. For better or worse, the galaxy would never be the same. News of the battle spread through the galaxy like wildfire. In the grand archives of the Council's Central Research Station, lead researcher Gray watched recordings of the humans fighting for the 100th time. His floating research platform hummed as he studied every detail of their movements. A week had passed since the pirate attack, and the Council had ordered a complete study of human combat capabilities. What they discovered disturbed them deeply. "Look at this," Gray said to his research team, pointing to an image of ancient human cave paintings. Even before they built cities, they were drawing detailed battle plans. They studied warfare while they were still hunting with pointed sticks. His assistant, a tall being made of shifting shadows, moved closer to the display. But surely they stopped once they developed agriculture, like every other species. "No," Gray replied, bringing up more images. "They got worse. Or better, depending on how you look at it. They built training grounds, places where they practiced fighting without actually fighting. They invented something called martial arts, the art of combat. They turned warfare into a science thousands of years before they discovered real science." The research team watched footage from Earth's military archives. Soldiers running obstacle courses, practicing with weapons, rehearsing battles that hadn't happened yet. To the alien researchers, it seemed impossible. Every other known species only fought when they had to. Humans deliberately prepared for combat even in times of peace. "There's more," Gray continued, his voice trembling slightly. "Look at their entertainment." He played clips from human movies, sports competitions, and games. They turn combat into play. Their children practice fighting skills before they can even speak properly. They create imaginary battles for fun. The implications terrified the research team. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved away from combat as they became more civilized. Humans had done the opposite. They had taken their primitive combat instincts and refined them, studied them, perfected them over thousands of years. A message flashed on Gray's screen. The Council wanted an immediate report on human combat capabilities. With trembling appendages, he began to compose his findings. "Honored Council members," he wrote, "humanity represents something unprecedented in galactic history. They are the only known species that maintained and developed their combat abilities throughout their entire civilization. While we abandoned warfare for protocols, they created something called military science. They can turn any activity into combat training. They practice fighting in all environments, underwater, in space, even in virtual worlds they create for this purpose." As Gray wrote, more data poured in from other researchers studying Earth's history. One report described how humans had multiple words just for different types of fighting. Another noted with alarm that humans deliberately made their training harder than actual combat, something no other species had ever conceived of doing. The council chamber fell silent as Gray presented his findings. The images played on floating screens. Humans practicing combat in the snow, in deserts, in space. Young humans learning to fight in schools called dojos. Soldiers running toward danger in training exercises. Every image showed the same thing. Humans weren't just capable of fighting, they actively worked to become better at it. But why? Asked a council member, their luminescent tendrils wavering in distress. Why maintain such capabilities in an age of peace and technology? Because they don't see combat capabilities as primitive, Gray explained. They view them as essential skills that might be needed at any time. And after the recent pirate attack, we can't say they're wrong. An older council member floated forward. Are you suggesting we should learn from them? Adopt their combat practices. Gray played the final recording. Captain Walker's crew training aboard the Thunder, practicing fighting in zero gravity, running battle simulations, always preparing. I'm suggesting we don't have a choice. The pirates have already learned this lesson. They're changing their tactics, becoming less predictable. If we don't adapt, we'll be left behind. The council chamber erupted in heated debate. But Gray noticed something interesting. The younger council members were already pulling up more information about human combat training. Some were even trying to mimic human fighting stances when they thought nobody was watching. The galaxy was changing. The humans hadn't just brought new weapons or tactics. They had introduced an entirely new way of thinking about combat. They had shown that being civilized didn't mean being defenseless, and that lesson was spreading faster than anyone could have predicted. The Krell Empire watched Earth's colony on New Haven from their cloaked ships. After weeks of observing the humans, the Empire's supreme commander felt nothing but contempt. These creatures had barely started expanding into space, and already they thought themselves worthy of attention. Look at them, he said to his war council, gesturing at the colony's simple defenses. No energy shields, primitive projectile weapons. They don't even have orbital platforms. Taking this world will prove humans are nothing special. His subordinates clicked their approval. The Krell were ancient warriors, feared across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They had chosen this isolated colony carefully, far from Earth and the Council's watching eyes. Here, they would prove that humanity's reputation was undeserved. The attack began at dawn. Krell ships descended from orbit, their weapons turning the colony's main defense towers to ash. They expected panic, chaos, the normal reaction of a civilian population under attack. Instead, warning sirens blared, and the colonists moved with practiced efficiency. They're evacuating to underground bunkers, reported a sensor officer. Every building had a hidden shelter beneath it. The Supreme Commander dismissed this as meaningless. Land the troops. Crush any resistance. Krell warriors, 3 meters tall in their battle armor, deployed across the colony. They found empty streets and abandoned buildings. Perfect ambush territory, their training warned. But these were mere civilians. What could they possibly? The first squad disappeared in a series of explosions. The second was caught in hidden nets that conducted massive electrical charges through their armor. The third reported the ground giving way beneath them, dropping them into prepared pit traps. Impossible. The Supreme Commander raged. These are farming colonists. A communication officer spoke up hesitantly. Sir, intercepted transmissions suggest every colonist undergoes basic military training. They call it the Civilian Defense Force. Even their children know basic combat protocols. More reports flooded in. The colonists weren't just hiding. They were fighting back. They used the colony's maintenance tunnels to move unseen, striking and vanishing before the Krell could respond. Their primitive projectile weapons, designed to pierce the thick hides of New Haven's dangerous wildlife, prove equally effective against Krell armor. They're using mining explosives as weapons, another officer reported. And their farming machines, they've converted them into armored vehicles. The Supreme Commander watched in growing horror as his perfect battle plan fell apart. The humans weren't fighting like warriors. They fought like everyone and everything was a weapon. They turned their colony's very infrastructure against the invaders. A massive explosion rocked the command ship. On the screens, the colony's fusion power plant erupted in a controlled detonation, taking out 3 Krell ships that had landed too close. The humans had destroyed their own power source just to damage the enemy. "Sir," a panicked officer called out, "we're detecting approaching ships." The colonists, they had a hidden communications array. They've called for help. The Supreme Commander felt his blood run cold. The humans had never been trapped and helpless. This entire colony was a defensive position, designed to hold out until reinforcements arrived. And now, multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. The sensor officer announced, "It's the Thunder and her battle group." The Supreme Commander recognized that name from intelligence reports. The same human ship that had humiliated the pirates. He had thought those stories exaggerated. Now, watching Captain Walker's vessels deploy in attack formation, he realized his mistake. "Retreat," he ordered, his pride bitter in his throat. Full retreat. Now. But the humans had learned from their battle with the pirates. The Thunder's battle group cut off their escape routes, herding the Krell ships into a killing zone. The colonists, far from beaten, launched a synchronized ground attack against the remaining Krell forces. In his command chair, the Supreme Commander finally understood. Humans hadn't just maintained their combat abilities. They had made warfare part of their entire civilization. Every human was a potential warrior. Every building could become a fortress. Every tool could be turned into a weapon. The Krell Empire had wanted to prove humans were nothing special. Instead, they had discovered why humanity was becoming the most feared species in the galaxy. It wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It was their absolute refusal to ever be helpless victims. As his ship's systems failed under the Thunder's relentless assault, the Supreme Commander sent one final message to the Empire. Do not underestimate humans. They do not know how to be conquered. Deep in the Krell Empire's scientific complex, Dr. Mindweaver studied the brain scans of captured human soldiers. After their failed attack on New Haven, the Empire had shifted its focus from military conquest to understanding what made humans different. What she discovered shook her to her core. "Impossible," she whispered, comparing the human brain patterns to those of other species. "They're not suppressing their fear response. They're using it." The laboratory hummed with activity as her team processed more data from the battles. They had recorded the neural patterns of humans during combat, expecting to find some biological quirk that explained their fighting abilities. Instead, they found something far more terrifying. "Look at this," Mindweaver told the gathered Empire scientists. When other species face danger, their brains flood with fear chemicals, triggering escape responses. Humans experience the same fear, but their brains have additional pathways. They can choose to override their survival instincts. She played a recording from the New Haven battle. A human farmer had faced down a Krell warrior 3 times his size. The brain scans showed he was terrified, yet he still fought. Not because he couldn't feel fear, but because he had decided the fight was worth being afraid. "They call it courage," Mindweaver explained. "The ability to act despite fear, not in its absence. Every other species we've encountered treats fear as an absolute command to flee or submit. Humans treat it as a suggestion." The implications stunned her colleagues. Their entire understanding of combat psychology was based on the assumption that all rational beings would choose survival over conflict when given the chance. Humans had somehow evolved past this limitation. "There's more," she continued, bringing up new data. "Their training methods deliberately expose them to fear. They jump from high places, fight in darkness, practice in vacuum. They teach themselves to function under conditions that would paralyze any other species." A military observer stepped forward, his armor clanking. "Are you saying they're fearless?" "No," Mindweaver replied. "That's what makes them even more remarkable. They feel fear just like we do. But where we see fear as a warning to stop, they see it as a challenge to overcome. They've turned one of nature's most powerful survival mechanisms into a tool. She showed them footage from human entertainment. People jumping off cliffs with thin fabric wings, diving into ocean depths, climbing sheer rock faces. They do these things for fun, she explained. They deliberately seek out fear-inducing situations, then learn to function within them. By the time they face actual combat, controlling fear is second nature. The military observer's scales paled. The colony defense, he muttered. We thought they were fearless because they stayed and fought. But they were afraid. And they fought anyway. Mindweaver finished. Every single human in that colony chose to face their fear rather than submit. Do you understand what this means? We can't break their will through fear because they expect to be afraid. They plan for it. Train for it. More data poured in from other research stations. Humans had sayings about fear. Fear is the mind killer. Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. They wrote stories about overcoming fear, created challenges specifically to face fear, and celebrated those who showed courage in the face of fear. We've been looking at this all wrong, Mindweaver realized. Their greatest weapon isn't their technology or their tactics. It's their ability to choose whether to obey their survival instincts. Every human is capable of deciding that something, their home, their friends, their principles, is worth dying for. The laboratory fell silent as the implications sank in. The Empire had prided itself on its fearsome reputation. But how do you intimidate a species that expects and accepts fear? How do you break the will of warriors who have already decided that some things are worth being afraid for? In the silence, Mindweaver made her final notes. Humanity's greatest strength isn't that they don't feel fear. Their greatest strength is that they feel it, understand it, and walk into danger anyway. They have mastered fear itself, and in doing so, have become the most terrifying warriors the galaxy has ever known. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council started with news no one wanted to hear. The ancient defense grid that had protected the galaxy's core worlds for millennia had failed. Through the breach came something worse than pirates or Empire fleets. The swarm had returned. Captain Walker stood before the council, watching the holographic display of the swarm's advance. Unlike the organized fleets of pirates or the precise formations of the Empire, the swarm moved like a living tide of darkness, consuming everything in its path. The automated defense systems can't adapt to their new attack patterns, Admiral Brightcore reported, his crystalline form dulled with worry. The swarm has evolved. They've learned to counter our protocols. The council chamber erupted in panic. The swarm had last appeared 5,000 years ago, nearly destroying all civilized space before the ancient defense grid drove them back. Now they had returned, stronger and smarter than before. Walker stepped forward. How many ships can you commit to the defense? Ships. A council member laughed bitterly. We have thousands of ships, but most species can't handle actual combat anymore. We relied on automated systems for too long. Our people freeze in real battle situations. Walker shared a look with Rice. They both knew what needed to be done, but convincing the council wouldn't be easy. Then let humans lead the defense. The chamber went quiet. Walker continued. Your ships have the technology. My people have the warrior spirit. Let us command the joint fleet. We'll teach your crews how to fight. Impossible, someone shouted. You can't train warriors in the time we have left. The swarm will reach the core worlds in less than 2 months. Walker smiled. You'd be surprised what humans can teach in 2 months. We've been preparing for wars that never happened for our entire history. Trust me, we know how to train warriors quickly. The council debated briefly, but they had no other options. Within hours, the first joint training sessions began. Human combat instructors were distributed throughout the Allied fleet. Walker watched from the Thunder's Bridge as alien crews learned to think like warriors. The training was brutal but effective. Humans taught alien crews how to function under stress, how to trust their instincts, how to improvise when plans failed. Most importantly, they taught them that fear was normal. It was what you did despite being afraid that mattered. "They're not ready," Admiral Brightcore said, watching the training exercises. "The swarm will be here in 3 weeks, and half our crews still hesitate in combat simulations." "They're more ready than you think," Walker replied. He pointed to a nearby display showing an alien crew responding to a surprise attack scenario. A month ago, they would have frozen. Now they're fighting back. Not perfectly, but they're fighting. The joint fleet grew stronger each day. Alien crews learned to combine their advanced technology with human tactical flexibility. The Council's ships were faster and more powerful than human vessels, but they had never been used to their full potential. Under human guidance, they became true weapons of war. Walker walked through the Thunder's corridors, now filled with aliens learning from his crew. In the training room, a tall insectoid species practiced hand-to-hand combat with human marines. In the tactical center, floating gas beings studied human battle strategies. Even the ship's mess hall had become a classroom where various species learned about humanity's warrior traditions. "The swarm has reached the outer defense line," Rice reported one morning. "They'll be in strike range in 6 hours." Walker nodded, sending the alert throughout the joint fleet. As battle stations were called, he felt pride watching the alien crews respond. They'd moved with purpose now, not blind panic. The humans had taught them well. "All ships, this is Captain Walker," he broadcast to the fleet. "You've learned what humans know about warfare. You've trained harder than you thought possible. Now it's time to show the swarm why this galaxy belongs to all of us." The response came in dozens of languages, but the meaning was the same. The joint fleet was ready for battle. They had learned from humanity's warrior spirit, and they would not submit to fear. As the swarm approached, Walker gave the order to advance. Humanity's greatest test wasn't just about proving themselves as warriors anymore. It was about teaching the galaxy to fight back against the darkness. And that lesson would change everything forever. The battle against the swarm lasted 23 days. When it ended, the joint fleet limped back to Council space, carrying both victory and heavy losses. The Thunder's hull showed deep scars from countless impacts, but she still led the fleet home, just as her captain had led them in battle. Walker stood in the Council chamber once again, but everything had changed. Where alien representatives had once mocked humanity's warrior nature, they now stood in respectful silence. The chamber's pristine walls showed repair marks from the pirate attack that felt like a lifetime ago. "The swarm has been driven back beyond the galactic barrier," Walker reported. "But more importantly, we proved something out there. We proved that any species can learn to fight when they have to." Admiral Brightcore floated forward, his crystalline form glowing brighter than ever. "Tell them what you saw, Captain. Tell them what their people achieved." Walker nodded, activating the chamber's holographic display. Images appeared showing alien crews in combat, a gas-based species fighting through their fear to hold the line against swarm boarders. Crystalline beings learning to improvise tactics when their protocols failed. Even the normally peaceful floating orbs had learned to use their gravity manipulation as a weapon. "Your people became warriors," Walker said, "not because they wanted to, but because they had to. They faced their fears, broke from their protocols, and fought to protect everything they cared about. They learned what humanity has always known, that being civilized doesn't mean being helpless." The Council members watched footage from the final battle. The swarm had expected to find the same easily predicted defensive patterns they had encountered thousands of years ago. Instead, they found a galaxy that had learned to fight back. The joint fleet had used human combat techniques combined with advanced alien technology in ways the swarm could never have predicted. "We lost ships," Walker continued. "We lost good people. But everyone who fought in that battle proved something that will change this galaxy forever. They proved that the warrior spirit isn't unique to humanity. We just never forgot it." Rice stepped forward, displaying more battle footage. "Look at your crews now. They don't freeze in combat. They don't blindly follow protocols. They think, adapt, and overcome, just like humans have always done. The Council's leader, a being of pure light, spoke. We feared humanity's warrior nature when you first arrived. We thought you were dangerous because you maintained your combat skills in an age of peace. Now we understand. You weren't maintaining those skills to conquer. You were preserving them because you understood something we had forgotten. Walker smiled. That there are things worth fighting for. That sometimes being peaceful means being strong enough to defend that peace. That's what makes humanity different. We never saw combat skills as primitive. We saw them as a responsibility. The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. On the displays, more footage played. Alien crews training together, sharing battle tactics, learning from each other. Humanity had started as teachers, but now every species was contributing its own knowledge and abilities to a new understanding of combat. The galaxy is changing, Walker said. The swarm will return someday. Pirates still raid the outer systems. The Empire is still a threat. But now, for the first time in thousands of years, the civilized species of this galaxy remember how to fight back. A young council member floated forward. We understand now why humanity became the most feared warrior species. Not because you are the strongest or the most advanced, but because you showed us that being a warrior isn't about wanting to fight. It's about being willing to fight when you have to. Walker looked around the chamber, remembering how it had felt during his first visit. The mocking laughter, the dismissal of human combat skills, the belief that warfare was beneath civilized species. All of that was gone now, replaced by something better, respect and understanding. Humanity isn't feared because we're warriors, Walker concluded. We're feared because we taught the galaxy how to be warriors again. And now every species knows that the price of peace isn't hiding from violence. It's being ready to defend what matters most. As the council session ended, Walker watched alien representatives discussing new joint training programs, combined fleet exercises, and sharing combat knowledge across species. Humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy hadn't been their warrior skills. It had been teaching others to find their own warrior spirit. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what humanity had been training for all along.